Ask the Podcast Coach for May 27th, 2023.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Oh, wait, hold on. There it is. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that again. I don't know. Somehow I accidentally hit.
Yeah.
Let me get that off the screen. I have.
Yeah, if you leave that window open, that's right.
But
We could use a new start. This seems to be the new trend.
it is. It's the jet lagged version of Dave. All right. Ask the Podcast Coach for May 27th, 2023.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there, I thought for a second we matched, and we don't. The one and only, I thought I had a blue shirt on.
I matched your background.
That's it. The one and only Jim Cullison from TheAverageGuy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. And big thanks to a lot of folks. Yesterday was my birthday, and a lot of birthday wishes. I always appreciate that. Thank you. Many from this audience did that, and I always appreciate that. It's great to have another birthday. Great to be here another year.
That's it. One more trip around the sun is always a good thing. So, and you're going to celebrate. I know you had probably cake, but you know what helps you wash down cake really, really good?
Well, it was the non-cake that I need the coffee for. So let's get this poured.
There we go. And of course, that coffee pour is brought to you by Mark over at podcastbranding.co. If you are looking for whether it's artwork or maybe you need a whole new website, or you're like, what is podcast branding? What? Mark is the guy to go see. He's been a podcaster for a long time. He's been a graphic artist even longer. He's an award-winning graphic artist. And the beautiful thing is, unlike somebody on, say, I don't know, Fiverr, he's going to go listen to your show. He's going to look at your website. He's going to sit down with you one-on-one and figure out exactly where you want to go. And I've used Mark multiple times, and I've never had to go back for another revision and another revision and another revision and another revision, because now they're going to charge you, because he gets it right. He just does, and it looks great. Keep in mind, people are going to see you before they hear you, and you want to look great, and you can make it super easy by just going to podcastbranding.co and tell Mark that, hey, I heard about you on the Ask the Podcast Coach show.
Big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, Based on a True Story podcast at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. And if it's here in the United States, Memorial Day weekend, and maybe you have an extra day off, an extra day to listen to a podcast, it might be a good opportunity to try something new. So if you're looking for a super interesting, fact-based podcast, check it out, basedonatruestorypodcast.com.
Yes, thank you, Dan. And yes, if today's a little wacky, it's weird because I could have slept in and my body said, man, let's get up at, whatever time I got. It was
How
way
was
early.
London? Welcome back from London. How was it?
Yeah, London was it's a great city. First day there, I almost got hit by a car because I looked the wrong way when crossing the street.
They have
was
fun.
fun.
Signs on the road.
Pavement, it says
Americans
look,
look this way.
Yeah. And then later, Chris Kamitzos almost got nailed by a bike. And so we both just started looking both ways. We can remember what way to look, but
you got to have your head on a swivel when you're in London. You cannot,
well, that and the whole, how you click the button to cross the street, that is a mild suggestion in London. It's kind of like, because people and if you do it in a crowd, we will just stop traffic, because what are you going to do? Run us over?
Mm-hmm.
And there are motorcycles that go between the cars, and then you got bicyclists. The traffic was fun. And I got to ride the Tube, which was kind of a fun Disney ride. Mm-hmm. The weird thing about it is it's this really fast, their train system is amazing. But you get on and you literally, I got a woman like just snuggled under my armpit. Like it was just, it's sardines. And when this thing takes off and you look over, and maybe 5 inches from the side of the train is the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they call it the Tube. And you're going easily 40 miles an hour probably, but it goes like every 15 minutes, right? I think every 3 minutes for some of them, but it was a lot of fun. The event was huge. You walked in and it was just, the signage was amazing. In fact, almost too good, because I talked to a couple people. They said, man, when I walked in, I kind of got overwhelmed because it was like, whoa, look at this. And so that was kind of interesting. But a lot of there were three vendors really, that had stick your head in a box. Basically, the one was really cool. It was felt, and it basically folded up to what would be a small suitcase. And you basically pulled it out, and this felded into that, and that, and all of a sudden you have this felt box, and I put my phone in there and talked, and it's absolutely dead. That was about $300 to $400. Then there was one on a stand that had this big C that you stuck your head into. That was, I want to say, around $1,000. And they work. And that one had a little light in it, which was fun. And then they had a vocal booth that you could build in your house. Like, it comes in pieces and you assemble it. And it took out 45 decibels of audio. So I'm in a room with like thousands of people, and I went in and closed the door, and it didn't make it silent, but man, it made it much quieter. So
silent enough, right? Silent enough, yeah.
Yeah. So if this was in a house or something like that, like my neighbor who mows his lawn all the time, would not be a problem with this thing. So, but that was like $8,000. But if you were serious, about that, it was pretty slick, and it had it was like a Lego set. Oh, would you like the air conditioning version? Well, then you put this vent in and this whole thing. So there was that, but Captivate was there. This one thing, and I can't remember the URL.
Hold on, before you go, tell folks what this conference was.
Oh, yeah. The Podcast Show 2023. Okay. And so it was really cool. I got to see Craig. It was Craig's birthday while I was there, so that was fun. Got to hang out with him that day, and just a lot of UK pod. It was fun because of the accents. Because 1 minute you would have like a proper low. This one guy just came in, and I felt bad because I to be honest, I couldn't understand a word he said, because everything was like, well, it was, and that was the thing, lovely. That was the word of the day, by the way. Americans, it's all about awesome.
Oh yeah,
everything is awesome. Just watch the Lego movie. If the Lego movie was made in the UK, it'd be like, everything is lovely, because that was the word I heard more and more. Oh, brilliant, lovely. So that was great. But you'd have that accent, and this one lady, I swear, was like Mrs. Doubtfire. She was like, oh, isn't that, it's great. It's just, and it was just, everybody would come up in outrageous French accents. And so it was a lot of fun. It was also, here's the thing, because I was like, why does this absolutely wipe me out? And it's because, and it's not the fact that you're standing from 9 to 6. So whatever that is, 9 hours, something like that. It's the most intense listening you do. Because I might have, you sound a little different than I do, so I got to really focus on what you're saying in some cases. Many people, I don't think, understood just how loud the whole room was. And they were kind of it's kind of like this. And then I'm like, I can't hear you. So there was that. But then you're listening because when you're in kind of a sales or consulting or anything like that, the first step is, what does this person want? So you can come up with the best answer. So it's really intense listening. And the fact that you're not being fake, right? You're not being like not that you would be like Eeyore, like, hi, welcome to the Libsyn booth. But you do have to be like, hey, what's going on? Are you podcast? How can I help you? So you're kind of on in a way, so that when you're finally not on, you just go. Boosh. So I'd be on at the booth, and then I ended up going to dinner with somebody. And then by the time you get back to the hotel, because I had done 99.9% of the latest episode of The Future of Podcasting, which is a show I do with Daniel J. Lewis. And I was like, oh, you know what, Daniel, just send me. All I forgot to do was get the title, and I had it set up. I can dial into my PC. I have a tool for that, except I did the episode on my Mac. And I was like, and then I thought I could get the files, and I was going to have to re-edit. And I would literally, by the time I got back to my hotel, it was just, you would just, poof, you're done. Like, that was it. And there were multiple times I would try, and I'd end up just falling asleep at the keyboard. So it's a long day. It's a lot of fun. And London's a really cool city. I got some proper fish and chips. I did not do bangers and mash, though.
Oh.
which I've found for anyone that's sausage and mashed potatoes.
Mhm.
But I did have a authentic in an English pub and English beer, and that's where I found out that the alcohol percentage in English beer, besides the fact that it's really tall, is much more. So I was kind of like, hey, I'm half on my butt already, and I've drank half this, so I think I'm done.
Mhm.
I'm a lightweight,
Mhm.
um, so
Well, glad you made it there and glad you made it back. Any industry stuff come out of what? You see anything interesting?
yeah. Well, number one, if you're a voiceover artist, you should be. I'll quote Michael. Oh, I won't quote him directly, but Mike from Music Radio Creative. I went to dinner with him and his wife and a guy from Heil and a bunch of other people, and he's a voiceover guy. And the AI stuff is getting really good. Like
Mhm.
there is a thing on, I think it's Telegraph. It's this really popular app for nerds, and there's a plugin, and you can say respond to this. You basically have a conversation with this, so it's kind of Chat GPT versus voice tools. So this guy goes, hey, here I'll have it respond in the voice of Joe Rogan. So he goes, hey, how about a shout out for Dave Jackson in the School of Podcasting, who's been podcasting for 18 years and blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Sit there for 5 seconds, voice comes up, hey, this is fake Joe Rogan, and I just want to do a shout out to my buddy Dave Jackson from the school. And he goes on and the whole time I'm like, that really sounds like Joe Rogan, but he did say it was fake Joe Rogan. So
Mhm.
then, and I forget the guy that showed me this, asked him another question. And when he replied, he goes, this is Joe Rogan. He did not say it was fake Joe Rogan. And then replied again. And I was like, oh, that's kind of spooky. But Mike at Music Radio Creative, I said, are you out of the voiceover business? I said, I was going to hire him to say, now it's time for a 10-minute tangent for those times when I want to go on not a 10-minute. Oh, that would be very bad. Although that's more realistic in reality, a 10-second tangent. And he goes, yeah, I don't really do that anymore because he's running his company and this and that. But he has now RoboMic, which is based on this thing called 11 Labs. I haven't even looked up the website. And it was crazy because he played me RoboMic sitting right there with Mike, and Mike would say something, and then he hit a button that he had typed the RoboMic to say, and it did. I was like, that's really freaky. And we had the conversation of how do you trademark the sound of your voice? Is that possible? And then somebody said, well, hold on. Okay, we'll table that discussion. He goes, what if I need like a Midwestern female, slightly younger, what are you going to, and Mike goes, hold on, pulls up the app, hits a couple switches, types in some words, Midwestern female voice. And I was like, yeah, that's so what we're going to, and this is definitely going to be an episode of the School of Podcasting. Right now, at least to the best of my knowledge, you can't teach AI to be funny. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really tried that. But B, they don't have the story about you. Like, I'm sure, Jim, you have probably stories about when you were in the Army,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
that's your
Mhm.
history that
Mhm.
you can use. And, it's entertaining, it's educational, it's inspirational, whatever it is. They kind of don't have your stories. Now, that doesn't stop them from making them up. But I was just like, it's one of those where not to like make it overly dramatic, but like when 9/11 hit and when I saw that second tower get hit, I was like, "Oh, like this is historic. Like I'm living in history. This is
Yeah.
something that we will all remember." And when I saw that, I was like, "This whole VO, GDP, AI stuff, yeah, I think some of it's going to come in and go like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to be I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to take over the world, but I was like, it's definitely going to have a large impact. And I'm like, I need to write down some notes in a journal somewhere because 5 years from now, things are going to be different. I'm not sure in what way, good or bad, but I'm like, this is going to change stuff.
Well, pain shapes the human experience, and
Mm,
AI just doesn't experience pain, right? It is pain, emotional pain, physical pain. I mean, that pain is a mechanism that teaches us what to do and what not to do, right? And or hey, this is really dangerous. You shouldn't do this, right? That's
yeah.
those kinds of lessons. AI doesn't really right now today. I'm not saying it's not ever going to happen, but doesn't have a way of experiencing those things. And it while it can experience the experiences of the internet, it doesn't have any right now for what we're using. It doesn't have any real-time experience. So it's still got a ways to go. I mean, it's getting better. It's basically just a giant word calculator at this point, and the large language models, the GPT that we've been messing with. But it's still, I mean, the human experience is still uniquely different because it's it we experience pain, and so that shapes our experience in doing things. So I think, yeah, I think we still have a ways to go. This voice thing, and even the image thing is pretty solvable with technology. If we think about, you could use a thing like a verified blockchain that would then have a token, so to speak. And whenever you authorized your voice, you would give it that, you'd put like a password in. That's not really what you'd use, but let's just, for simplicity's sake, you would add your token to the voice, so that it was printed underneath in the code. This token would be printed underneath the actual words or the actual things that you're saying. You wouldn't hear it, but it would be like a stamp, right, on the audio. And then we would, you could tell pretty easily, hey, this has been authorized by this person, or it hasn't been authorized. In the United States, we have this weird thing where we make our political leaders say, I endorse this ad, but
Right.
who knows if they really did or not. Somebody could have ripped that thing off, right? So, and we'll always have, legal or justice systems to take people to court if people are using our voice inappropriately. I don't think I think we get a little leery of this stuff coming up. When we think about, oh, somebody's going to impersonate me. I think there'll probably be there'll need to be some solutions that come right behind it. We have the technology to do it today. It's not that particularly hard to authorize, to create that identity authorization, even of a voice print or a video print. Listen, video is going to be another issue, so we're going to
Yeah.
have to solve that in some ways to have a valid ID. The blockchain is a perfect way to do this. Some
Mm.
people know that as cryptocurrency, but the technology behind this is the blockchain. And the blockchain would be a perfect way to do authorization and authentication of these kinds of things, whether it be video or audio. So technology's there. We just got to implement it.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's like I say, it was just one of those where I was like, and then I started thinking about it for, like, hey, I still need to record my audio version of, Profit from Your Podcast. And Mike just looked at me and went, done. And I was like,
Mhm.
so I was like, but here's the thing, again, going back to it can't do everything, is I want to do the Gary V version of an audiobook where I read the book and then go, hey, this is updated since I put out the book, and throw in some extra stuff. And the robot can't do that. So, but it was spooky. Then the other thing, let me see if I can share my screen here, that came
Well,
out.
but what if you could, in that book, what if the text was the key, and then you
Yeah.
allowed that reader to listen to it in the voice of Dave Jackson, or in the voice of, they could choose the voice they want to use to listen to it in. I think that's really, really practical.
Yeah,
You know, then you
it's
could update I mean, think about this. As you're writing it, AI could be following behind you, fixing things in
yeah.
dynamically in real time as you're writing this. Tell you where it fixed things. You could review those. I think. Listen, to be honest, I think AI is more interesting than I am. So, like, I don't. I'm going to embrace that because I think it writes way better than I do. And then use these voice print technologies that you've authorized to say, yeah, you can, Joe Rogan could make money by saying, "Hey, it's $100 to license my voice to read
Right.
your book." He never steps a foot in the studio, and it sounds perfect. Like, how cool could that be?
The other thing, there was a company, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of it. I just remember they had a yellow lightning bolt, but you could upload a video. So I said, well, most of my videos are on YouTube, or 6 to 10 minutes long. He's got anything? I go, oh, this would be perfect. Ask the podcast coach. So he pulled the video right from YouTube. So I didn't even have to download and upload it. And then, of course, via AI, it finds the most engaging parts and splits it into video. And that was very AI, that it was like, boy, this got me close. But there was often a little too much at the beginning, or a little too much at the end, that it wasn't quite precise enough, that it was going to need a human to go, that's a good clip. I just got to edit it. And I was like, okay. And some of them were not engaging. There was one, I forget what it was, but it made like 12 clips out of a 90-minute show. And there were some that were like, okay, I could use that. And the way it worked, and I was kind of bummed because you get all these clips. They send you a link. You watch the clip. If you want it, it's $5.
Yeah.
So it was based on you only buy it if you get it. And he is switching to a transcription. And I was like, that would make me not want it, because I was paying for a lot of stuff I wasn't going to use or needed extra editing. And I wish I could remember the name of it. It was, something blah, blah, blah. That helps, Dave. But it was something.
Check out the show notes. It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. So that was the one thing I saw was cool. There was some sort of vitamins, by the way. It's vitamins on that side of the pond, not vitamins, vitamins. Somebody had vitamins for your voice that I have yet to take yet, but I bought a bag because they're not available in the US yet. The other thing was interesting was they had a car, and again, but there's the new sound thing that you can get in your earbuds. It's like Dolby
Atmos.
Maybe that's it. Dolby Atmos. They had it in a car, and so this guy would put you in, and he had connected, I think, his Bluetooth to the car. And so first they play a movie trailer, and it is butt vibrating bass and super pristine, and it was cool. And I was like, that's awesome. And then he played like the first verse and chorus of Rocket Man, and it was just pristinely, just so clear. I remember at one point, it's just the drummer just barely on a hi-hat on his drum, and I was just like, man, that is like just no hiss at all, because they had the original masters from Elton John, so they redid it in this Atmos sound. And I was like, well, that's great, that's awesome, but like, and they said it's coming to sound bars, and it's like it's the wave of the future kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's cool. I'm just not sure, like on our show, aside from the music, it's two guys talking. Yeah, it's going to be mono pretty much. Maybe Jim's a little bit in the left speaker. I'll be in the right if we want to go absolutely crazy. But I could see for those people doing, narrative style kind of NPR audio drama stuff, those guys are going to love that. So that would be cool. But Amazon had a giant booth. Spotify, it was really odd because you could walk around. There was downstairs, and then you'd go upstairs, and there were more little booths. And everybody had like this open path, so you could just go into their booth, except one. It was kind of like let's call it a walled garden. And it was Spotify. I was like, how apropos.
How ironic or coincidental or whatever the word is, right?
Yeah. So that was fun. I moderated a panel on selling ads, UK versus US. And so there are, different traditions, different obviously they have GDPR, so you have to be careful about that. And so I just basically walked in, teed it up, and let the guys from AdvertiseCast. And there was a guy from Spotify on that panel as well. So I did mention that how much, the easiest way to grow your audience is, of course, to list your show on every app on the planet. So I had to kind of just throw that in there since there was a guy sitting on the panel from Spotify. Yeah.
Let me back up just a smidge. You talked about the car experience, and we ask ourselves the question, like, so why okay, I mean, cars are good enough, I mean, the audio is good enough, it's noisy,
right? I
think as we look ahead and the cars become more self-driving, we're still working on that, right? We're getting close. It's not all the way there yet, but we're getting closer. I think that in-car entertainment experience gets to be even more important because you don't have to pay attention as much, right? Now, people fall on different sides of I never want the car to drive itself, and other people are like, I would never drive my car again given the opportunity. So, take this with a grain of salt where you land. But I think we're going to see a lot more car experience. It's going to get better, even better than it is now. And I think we're just scratching the surface because of all the regulations around what you can and can't do inside of a car. once we figure out this self-driving thing, I think all bets are off. I think the entertainment experience in a car can be much more important than, or at least we see it that way, much more important than it is today. So I think that's where they're headed with that. It seems a little weird right now because you're like, hey, I'm still have to look at the road. Yeah, probably a day is coming here in the next X number of years. I can't predict that stuff. That will negate all that stuff, and your in-car experience will be different, including form factor. Like today's cars are really designed to be driven. What if you didn't have to have a driver? What would you do differently with a vehicle that is just it's basically just shuttling people around as opposed to you having to drive in them? Now there's safety concerns and some of those kinds of things, but I
Well,
think we have a different day ahead.
well, just that it is a different perspective because I was going to take a taxi to the train station that would go directly to Heathrow, back to the airport. And I talked to the person behind the desk at the hotel, and she said, "You know what?" She goes, "If it's in the budget, just take the taxi." She's like, "Because I'm not sure how early the train started, blah blah." So I did, and this guy shows up in a taxi, and it's an official taxi. Like they have a thing that's like you have to be accredited or whatever. Guy opens up the back door, and it's kind of like this. It looks like an old mobster movie where the guys would like all run out with machine guns. So the doors open,
Yeah.
and it's almost like a little baby bus. They have like 5 seats back there so that you can face each other, almost like a limo
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it was really cool. I was like, well, this is not what I expected. And they had your card swiping machine right in the back. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the car experience is. The other thing that was fun, um, in a way, I got to be called an old curmudgeon. And I do remember that. Now, here's the funny thing. I can't remember the other one, the guy that gave me the okay experience, but the guy that called me old, oh, I definitely remember that guy. It was kind of funny in a way, and he didn't mean it maybe as it came off. But do you guys now see the lemur site with a pop-up, of course? Okay. So that yes, this guy right here, Sean, I think if I remember right. Beautiful Irish accent, by the way. Awesome. And their whole thing here, let's let them track us. This is where, and it's LIMOR.IE, where voices meet. And so what this is it's available on Google Play and iOS. And so you can see here's a Chris left a message, all sorts of things. And what you do is you click a button and you can record a video that could be unlimited. And then your audience can leave voice comments on it. And he looked at me and said, "So you do this, you do that, and presto, it's a podcast." And I went, "Wait, so there's an RSS in there?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Well, I don't want to die on this hill, but that's not really a podcast." And he goes, "No, it's a podcast." And so I held up a can of Coke and I go, "Look, it's a Pepsi." And I go, "No, it's not." And it's like, so, and then finally I said, "Look, I've been doing this for, 18 years. I'm kind of a stickler. It's not a podcast." And he went, "Oh, right. Old guy, podcaster. Like, I get it. All right. It's not a podcast." And I was like, wow, that dude just called me old.
Was it
And
one of
then
these two guys in the picture? Was it the
it's
young
this
guy?
guy. Yeah.
The young
Sean.
guy in the
And-
picture?
yeah.
Okay.
And actually, Sean is a nice guy. But I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
what was fun is that he then wanted to know if Libsyn would want to partner with us. And I'm like, wow, you just called me an old guy. And granted, I'm
Well,
not
we
a
are
young guy.
kind of old. I mean, we
Yeah,
are.
I'm like, yeah, compared to Sean, I'm ancient. So, but I was just kind of like, again, I'm like, so I can record now. Granted, unlimited video is a different thing, but I could do that on Slack. I do that on Slack right now with a group I have where we record audio and video back and forth, and it's free. Because I asked him, I go, "What's your business model?" And it's something where businesses can get one of these so the employees could talk back and forth. And I was like, okay. But it was just one of those. I was like,
we can't even get people to turn their cameras on Zoom when we've
Yeah.
told them to, much less leave video messages with each other. That's a really interesting concept because we're still there's still people who don't want to turn the camera on, and we ask them all
Right.
the time. We have to beg them to record videos sometime. Hey, we'd love, because we do this a lot at Gallup, where we have the employees record recognition, then they'll stitch that together into a recognition video that we play during our monthly awards, and works out great. But man, getting people to actually do that sometimes, Still kind of difficult. Getting better. We do it a lot better than we used to try to do that pre-pandemic, and it never worked.
Yeah.
Now, you get maybe half or three quarters. So I don't know. It is interesting. Yeah, some people really love to do that. I do. I want your camera on if I'm talking to you. I want
Right.
your camera on. But others just not interested. They're like, no, I don't want you to see me.
Yeah, unless you're Scott from last week, in which case you can keep your camera off. I did get a question about that. If you're listening to the audio version, most of that got cut out, but we had a guy come on, didn't turn on his video. We brought him into the show, and then it was porn, basically, is what he put on the screen.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Brad Miller was asking, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this work with a bishop of the Catholic Church. Like, that's kind of a big deal. How do I make sure that doesn't happen?" And so the big thing is we share, like if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/question, it will pop you right into the backstage of the video. I should say that. I always say it pops you into the video. No, it doesn't. It pops you into a backstage area. And what Jim is going to be doing now going forward is when you come in here, there is a private chat. There's a chat that I'm looking at, that everybody can see. I can see where DR is throwing some things and Kyle and Coach Dave. But there is a chat that only Jim and I can see. So Jim can go, "Get this guy off. He's boring," and or whatever. And so Jim's gonna kind of
they can see that too. Technically, they see that chat.
Yeah,
too.
that's true. Yeah, so you have to say nice, but Jim will somehow screen people after that. So that will be that's
we've never had a problem with it though. I mean, this was the we're 438 episodes into this, and this is maybe the second or third Baba Booey that we've had. I love that word. I just love saying it. You taught me that word, and I just love saying Baba Booey. That's maybe the third. So I don't think we need to get too crazy. People will jump in and I'll say, "Hey, tell me who you are and what your question is."
Yes, yeah.
And now they could fake that and we could get another Baba Booey. You should probably consider, if you haven't already, Dave, you should probably go back to the live version of it
and cut that out.
And cut it out. YouTube makes really good tools to just go in and wipe that thing out. But we'll screen from here on out. I don't think it's that big of a deal. We're just going to ask questions before you got to kind of prove you've got something to say before.
Yeah, that's it.
Here. Yeah. Which is a speed bump. It's an unfortunate speed bump that we've had to put in there, and but it's okay. It's okay. We'll still get great calls in here, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah, but the other things that have come up was this one, and I'm not sure how he got it, but James Cridlin found this out. Podnews has obtained a document with full details of a YouTube RSS integration pilot that is running with some partners. The service pulls new audio from an RSS to upload it to YouTube, complete with a static image of the show's artwork. Shows are already using it are CNN's One Thing and CityCast Pittsburgh. Unlike the other RSS-based podcast platforms, YouTube will not offer pass-through, meaning YouTube is going to host that audio. The RSS feed is just a way to automatically ingest the audio once to their systems. Your hosting company cannot see how many times a podcast episode was listened to on YouTube because all podcast content on YouTube is hosted on YouTube. YouTube requires a podcast must not contain any ads, which is interesting because, this show does. Regular ads are not allowed to be uploaded to YouTube, which I'll love to know how are they going to figure that out? We request feeds to be, we don't demand, but we request feeds to be ad-free. Sponsored segments can, however, be included if manually marked as such. On a technical level, YouTube crawls each RSS every 5 minutes. Publishers can add a rectangular image for YouTube using the media : thumbnail tag. Only static images are supported. And so there were two things that kind of happened this weekend. One was, and I think we talked about this last week, you can now upload up to 8 gigs, I think, of video on Twitter. And Ben Shapiro and his whole network have said, "Oh yeah, we're throwing stuff on Twitter." And because of that, people are now asking, should I, if people on the platform are people you don't agree with, and we can apply this to both YouTube, that was the question that came up. Are you going to put your information on this? And some people are like, well, no, because other people I don't like are on there. And I was like, that's a really weird, because to me, I'm like, if there are people that want to consume it, I'm a little different, right? I don't make my money from ads. I make my money from people joining my membership site. So I'm always like, put it everywhere. But it's going to be interesting to see. But I just thought people's original reaction to Twitter, especially, was like, well, I'm not putting my stuff over there. Like, why? Because there are people that I disagree with. And I was like, well, shouldn't that be even more reason to put your side of the story for other people to find? And it was just kind of weird that that was like the knee jerk reaction. So, what are your thoughts of YouTube getting maybe into the hosting company?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's coming. Like
Yeah,
they're going to try. Who knows if they'll be successful or um, have the longevity to stick it out. I mean, we just haven't seen a lot of commitment from those folks over there. They're good
yeah.
at hosting. They're absolutely, I mean, they are great at hosting videos. So they know how to do this. They know how to do it well. It wouldn't surprise me. Their app, the YouTube Music app, is that, yeah, YouTube Music app. They've recently
Oh yeah.
updated that to add a feature so you can subscribe to a podcast and I'd be watching the video. At the on the top of the window, there's an audio video switch, and you can just immediately hit a button, switch it over to audio only. It'll bring it up to the thumbnail art, and it makes the switch seamlessly with the audio. It's almost like it's separated the audio from the video in some ways, and it's
Hmm.
syncing them. And then when you make the switch, it just goes back. There is no, at least on my phone, there's no visible like the picture comes up and the audio keeps going. Doesn't make you start over. I mean, it's a pretty fancy. If I was in my car, say I was watching a YouTube video before I left somewhere, and then I was getting into the car, I could put it in my phone holder, just hit audio, switch over to a static picture, and then keep going. Doesn't even miss a beat. So that's interesting. I think that's not necessarily new as of this week, but
Right.
that's interesting. Like that's actually helpful, and we haven't seen a lot of helpful things out of those apps for podcasts. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, in the whole RSS ingestion, that is official now that we've, but that's again probably going to be a couple weeks, maybe, who knows. But the other thing to keep in mind, because it is a Google company, like, remember when we are all excited about Facebook was going to have podcasts? That lasted what, 4 months before
Right,
they went.
right.
Yeah. So I'm like,
Yeah,
and,
I didn't.
and Google is somewhat famous for, I mean, Google, the phrase Google graveyard, and yeesh, that pile just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So, um, Dan says YouTube Music does that with music videos and songs too. So,
Yeah,
now they're just going
yeah,
to do it with podcasts.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
We did have a question here going back to AI from Kurt. Says my marketing guy told me we need to post Instagram 2 times per day. Okay. Video at 10 to 15 seconds per post. Content aside, we are thinking AI can assist with editing and production. I would do the VO on the infographics. Um, I have not seen. I have not seen. I see. I'm not a big Instagram person. I have an Instagram. That's a 2 times per day. I guess that's not that much. I guess the thing I always get about Instagram, I guess you can now you could always reply, and I think you can put a link in your post, so you can actually point people back to your website. But I did see. I was talking earlier. There is a tool. I need to go to the website of whatever the podcast show, london.com. There is a tool that you basically point it at your YouTube and it cuts them into little bits. There's Headliner. There are a bunch of tools now that are coming out that will split things up. 10 to 15 seconds. Boy, that's on one hand, it's short. That's the hard thing, especially if you're taking content from just a conversation where you're not trying to say something in 10 seconds, it's probably going to take you longer than 10 seconds. I see a lot of, for me at least, I can see automated editing when somebody makes a point and then there's another half a sentence. I'm like, why did you leave this next, unless they're thinking it's going to tease me to go see the whole thing? But I will say, I was listening to Jessica, and I feel bad for She Podcast. She Podcast announced they've now gone from their event in DC to being an online event. So they didn't cancel it. And then Chris Kermitzos was nice enough to give them part of his space at PodFest in January in Orlando. So they're going to have the online event with all the speakers and everything like that. And then in terms of a personal meetup, they're going to probably do this, I'm going to guess, a couple days before PodFest. But those will be, and then if you have a Sheep Podcast ticket, you can get into PodFest for free. And one of the things, because I was trying to figure out, like, why didn't this work? What was going on? And Jess talked about it, and she was very transparent that when she signed the contract, they said, "Oh, well, your ticket's going to be at least $700." And she was like, "Wait a minute, hold on. I didn't want to have anything like that." And she said, "I should have stopped it right there." But the other thing I thought was interesting is she mentioned that the event planner kind of kept going, "Let's try this, let's try that." And I'm like, because who benefits if the event keeps going on? The event planner. So sometimes I wonder if social media people keep telling you to do social media, especially if who makes the social media, they do. So I'm not saying don't do social media. That's a lot of social media. But if they have the credentials and they can, kind of show their, prove their point with some, stats, that would be cool. I don't know. How often do you have like a marketing team at
we do
Gallup that does all that?
Yeah, we have a couple folks that do that, and it's all the time. I mean, we're pretty in both Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, which are really our biggest platforms for that kind of work. We have folks that schedule that stuff, and I see it all the time. And so it's we do it a lot. And I don't know, I guess you could overdo it. Most people are underdoing it. If your content fits itself well to that, great. I don't know, just figure you gotta, and if you're gonna be the one doing it, you gotta like doing it. Otherwise you'll do it for 2 weeks. You'll be like Google. You'll do it for 3 or 4 weeks and like, we don't really like this, and you stop doing it. So it's got to kind of fit naturally in. I think there are some tools, and there are some things getting better with that. We talked about Descript. We talk about them all the time. There's some tools there where you could cut some things in and out and streamline your process. But I think ultimately you got to like it. And then you got to like the traffic and the comments you're going to get after the fact. I've said this before, but Dave, I follow all these YouTubers that get famous. They get 500,000 subscribers or whatever, even at 50 or 60,000 subscribers. And immediately, as soon as they start getting over a certain number, let's say I'd say 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, they start in their YouTube, they start trying to answer all the haters, because you just at that size, you just generate, or people who always have a better idea than you, and they can't. It's really hard for most people to separate that and keep moving on. It's like you don't have to answer every question, maybe some of them, but you don't have to answer every question or answer the haters. In fact, that's what they want you to do. They're hoping to get on your program with hate. So you've heard me say this a bunch. Just be careful what you wish for in that area. A lot of followers, a lot of listeners, a lot of downloaders, whatever you want to call them. You got to kind of be ready to manage that. And it's way harder than you think. You think it's like, oh, this is going to be great, they're going to love me. No, actually, the ones that really like you rarely write to you. It's the ones that want to hate on you, that they're the ones who speak up. And then you start feeling like, man, does everybody hate me? Is this like, you do. This is a huge driver of imposter syndrome, right? You get out there, you start doing some things, you start creating content. And we even see this in our chat room during the show from time to time where people disagree. And you got to be able to separate that and just say, one, you don't have to fight every battle. And two, you're going to get some hate. And you got to kind of, I don't allow comments on our YouTube channel without moderation. I just don't. And some people are like, well, that's censorship. Well, it's our channel and I'm not going to allow it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to approve everything. And it keeps the riffraff down. We're not necessarily interested in everybody's opinion at that point. Now, if it's nice and kind and fair, it's great. But if you're going to come out there and be inappropriate, you're going to get the axe. So be careful. That's some of those things when you think, oh, I want a ton of downloads, and then when you start getting them, it's a huge thing to manage for sure.
Yeah, the URL I went over and looked. It's clipgen.io, I believe. Let me double check. I just had it. Doggone it. Because they're yes, clipgen.io is the one that does that. And then DR said there are some other tools, such as Chopcast. I think that's the one I've heard of. Nova. She has both of them. Okay, which one? Here's the fun part. Like DR, when somebody goes, which one's better? Because I'm sure they both have like cool features, but as always, that's going to be one of those it depends kind of things. That's always kind of tricky. Kyle Bondo has a great point here. One of the co-hosts of Comic Lab had a comic go to the top of Reddit. Wow, that's amazing, right? Top of Reddit, 2 million upvotes. Wow, from all that love, he got 6 new subscribers.
Yeah.
That's the part where social is tough. I'm reading a book right now. It's actually I think I'm up to 3 chapters. It's called Listenable by a guy named Bert Weiss, who is apparently the king of Atlanta radio and has now got a network going in podcasting, been podcasting for a while. And his whole thing is you have to have content and your delivery. Because there are some people that have great content, but they stumble all over it. And Joe Rogan, I was listening to Joe Rogan because the Dice Man was on it. Oh, I'm talking about getting banned from MTV. Oh, and he was the same Athletic Greens ad is played every time they have an ad break. And I was like, really? Like, I get it. It works. I remember AI1 or whatever the product is, but I was like, really? You couldn't have come up with another? You couldn't have read the same script or 3 scripts. I'm like, I'm going to listen to the same, I guess, whatever reputation is cool. Chris Nessie is saying, hey, when we're talking about social media, make sure that person understands podcasting. Yeah, I did run into that a little. I had one person spent like 15 minutes asking me, how do I become a podcast consultant? Michael, step 1, start a podcast. That would be my advice. Kind of hard to prove to the world that you know what you're talking about by listening to my podcast. And it's kind of weird to tell people that, hey, this is a great way to get clients, except I don't have one. I was like, drink your own Kool-Aid, in other words. So that would be it. And Jim, I think, is that the right link? You have asked the podcast coach. It's question.
Oh, I my bad. Here, I'll retype it. Sorry.
Yeah. And Kurt is coming back. I told him I'll do the voiceover, no problem, but the rest you'll handle the rest. Yeah, it's the thing with social is, first of all, when I go to social, I'm not looking. I'm just I'm just scanning, really, and I might stop at a something, and maybe I'll click on something, but it's got to you have to stop me from scrolling. So that's the first thing, and I guess probably many times I don't do anything. I just scroll and go, yeah, nothing here. But you have to have a pretty good hook to get me to click something because I'm here to scan. So that's going to be kind of tricky to that. But I've heard the guy from Pacific Content, who is now at Bumper, whose name is escaping me, but does all sorts of deep research, has basically said social is great. It's free for the most part. And like many things that are free and easy, when it works, it's a trickle.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Meisner, thank you, Daniel. So I forget, I think he was on Cap Show's podcast, and he was talking about that. Like, that's kind of true. And it's a bummer that, you can kind of see in some stats who your referrers are. And I get a fair amount of people from Facebook because I spend a lot of time in Facebook groups answering questions, and I have it so anyone can see my profile, so anyone can see my link to my website. So the link can't be reached.
Well, I just can't type apparently.
Well, so, then what we'll do is we're just going to throw this in the chat room. The ugly link, I think this will work, right? If I put the StreamYard link there. Yeah. Okay. Good. So
yeah.
Meanwhile, we have another.
I must have typed
question.
Something wrong because it works. Anyways, okay.
Okay. This is from Records and Bands, so this is right up my alley. I'm setting up a new DIY record label alongside my DIY music podcast. Do I want separate social media accounts, or can I run them along each other on the same accounts? That's a fun question. It's social media day here, which is fun. I think for me, like my personal account is now my social account. It's I've kind of combined them both because if you stand next to me for longer than 10 minutes, I'm going to start talking about podcasts. So, but if I had a personal account where I was, connecting with family and friends, and I think if the two are vastly different, I think I would set up one for, like, for example, like all my podcasts now are about podcasting. But for a while, I had one about cooking, I had one about weight loss, like, and I had one about podcasting. So the people that are trying to learn how to use their new Travalo oven could care less that I have another podcast out on podcasting, because they're not looking to podcast. They're trying to figure out how to, cook better. Um, so I think if it's similar topics, yeah, it's a matter of you don't want to, if it's too far off, because if there's nothing there, they're eventually going to go, every time this guy posts, I could care less. So
Mhm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, we just had this conversation with my team yesterday about YouTube and this, and we have all these podcasts that we do. We do them in 7 different languages. In the
Mm.
early days, I just did playlists on our main account for those languages, and then we got feedback from our subscribers, like, "Hey, I subscribe to this thing in English. I'm not interested when you either when it comes out in other languages." Okay, that's not very inclusive, but that's okay. You could ignore it, but that's okay. So we went in and separated and created separate channels for each one of the still under the main brand account, but separate channels. And I was yesterday I was showing one of our social media people like this, and her eyes just rolled to the back of her head when she was thinking about it administratively, right? You've got it, and so it's 8 different channels for us then to manage. And so yeah, it is more work if you start separating them. Now, if it's just two, you make the call. You can have them, like you said, if the content's very, very similar, you might want to have them on the same channel. For you, and I'm talking YouTube here, but this can apply to any of the social media stuff that's going on out there. You we create Ask the Podcast Coach, which are 90-minute shows. What if we started interspersing shorter 5-minute answers into that? People had subscribed expecting to get 90 minutes. It's a never ending question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says, or she, so people who I work with on the label will also guest on the podcast, and they should link up quite well. Yeah. So in that case, I would have them, if they have their own personal social, they should probably, link to the official. If you look at Frontiers is a record label in Italy. And what they've done is they have found a niche that's underserved, and that is people that loved rock in the mid 80s, right? The big hair stuff. And they keep grabbing all, like, let's grab the bass player from Winger and put it with the guitar player from Dokken and the singer from Faster Pussycat and the drummer from whatever. And they put out albums. These bands are never going to tour, but people love that music. And I see that they always have a link to Frontiers, the record label, and then they have a social media for the band. So, because again, I found this band, they're great. It's from this company. Wait, what's the company? You go over there, like, wow, they have a whole thing here where, the guitar player from Dio is playing with the bass player from the Scorpions, and the whole 9 yards. And you're like, it's a weird business model. I'm like, because how do you make money back if the band doesn't tour? But okay, it does. That's a whole other US, UK, Europe thing, because there are bands in the 80s that couldn't play a closet in the United States now, and they could fill out an arena in
Mhm.
Japan. So that's the tricky part. So
Yeah.
Coach Dave has a tip for us. By the way, if you haven't recorded one yet, I'm not doing this episode till Sunday. If you go to, now this, we're gonna kind of, don't let your brain go crazy with a brand switch here. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com, schoolofpodcasting.com/question, the question of the month is, and I'm leaving this super open-ended, what's your favorite tool? Or, and if you have more than one, it's not so much what is your absolute favorite, but it's what's one of your favorite tools. So Coach Dave says, and I need that by the end of today because I'm going to work on it tomorrow. He says, I use social manuals. Is that how you pronounce that, you think?
Socialmonials. Socialmonials.
Socialmonials. I get it. Okay.
Socialmonials.
I can hit scores of channels with different formats and schedule them. All right. Yeah, I know. Speaking of AI and scheduling, Libsyn, who I, in full disclosure, work for, Libsyn.com, has a social schedule built into it. And I should have thrown this into the AI discussion. If I understand this right, when I was listening, Buzzsprout just added AI. It's an additional price, like $10 a month, and it will transcribe your show and then give you a suggested titles and suggested chapters. So I haven't played with it yet. I just heard about that yesterday, and I was like, huh. The new join link is askthepodcastcoach.com/question. We'll get you right.
And I re-put the direct link back in there. Sorry, I've been having, well, for whatever reason this morning, maybe it was the birthday party last night. So
that could be
very possible that that's the case.
And continuing on with this social discussion, and again, this is why I love the chat room, because I had almost nothing this morning. I was like, I'm trying to
don't give it away, Dave. Don't tell them we don't actually have anything.
Well, I had a couple. I'll just talk about what we did in England.
Fine, yeah.
Finally, then, would you do records and bands podcast from Lost Hiker Records? Let's think about this. So let's take Frontier Records, right? I don't know I've never heard about Frontier Records, and I'm not going to search for Frontier because I don't know who they are, but I might search for hair bands or 80s metal or whatever. So depending on what genre that record label has, you have to kind of reverse engineer. What are people going to be searching for that you're the answer to? The fun question, or the fun thing that I heard, if you're a podcaster that wants to make money, what problem are you solving? That's I'm like, you know what, that's pretty close to it. The podcast is 3 years old and has a good following. The label is brand new. So yeah, it's because if somebody said records and bands podcast from Lost Hiker Records, what do you think that's about? That's very obvious, records and bands, but that phrase itself, records and bands, is really vague, because I don't know if you're a classical music, if it's ska, if it's techno or insert whatever. Jim, you look like you're in deep thought.
No, I was thinking, along these lines, like,
yeah,
it's generic enough. I think it's fine just as it is. Listen, a title's important, but it's not, no single title is going to get you 100% of the way there, right? And you can be quippy or catchy with it. You can be very logical with it. Eventually, you just got to own what you got and promote it.
Right.
I think of, when Google first came out, we went, what? I mean, I remember this. Remember Yahoo search was the big deal. Everybody was on Yahoo, and like, that was the thing. And all of a sudden Google popped in, and like, what's a Google?
Yeah.
And now we use that word, like the word so no one would question the Google. And why? Because it's a strong brand now. So once you create the title, once you create the name, it's your job to create the brand awareness around it. And it doesn't matter what it is. If your brand awareness is strong, people will learn, right? If you have a great product, doing great stuff, and you've got great advertising, people will learn. So
yeah, I mean, Aaron, I think it's Mankey from Lore. I mean, that guy, he's on a big network now, and it turned into a TV show and things like that. But when he first started off, he was just a dude with some fun stories. A couple other quick things. We got Chrissy. Yeah, it is jet lag. Chris Nessie is on deck. And we also have a question from Spoon coming up. Kyle Bondo has a good point. AI show titles and chapters are the worst. They're boring, unoriginal, and tone deaf. Use them at your own peril. It's weird. I've taken AI generated titles and run them through a tool, which in itself is somewhat AI, to grade the AI. And yes, they usually come up around 65%, and you're shooting for 100. And I'm like, ugh. So, and then, okay, yeah, let's bring on Chris. Then we'll thank our awesome supporters, and then we'll head on over to Spoonville. So, Chris has promised not to show us his junk. So thank you, Chris. We appreciate that. And
wait, hold on. I'm in my garage.
That's the literal junk. Yes.
Yeah.
Dave, welcome back to this side of the pond. Good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Also, a quick happy belated birthday shout out to Craig from Inglea's podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Craig, if you're listening, I want that because of my podcast story, and you know the one I'm talking about. I won't want to spoil it here, but he's got a good one.
So I wanted to call in this morning because you guys were just briefly talking about some social media stuff, and there's a tool that I've been using that I think might be good. It's called Opus Clip, OPUS, and I think it's opus.pro. But if you Google it, it should come up. You can take a YouTube link, and it will, through the power of AI. If you've never heard of AI, I don't know what you're doing. And it will take your YouTube video, and it will give you, and it will generate clips with the captions, and it ranks them what it thinks will perform well socially, whether you want to post it on TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, and then you can download the videos. And right now it looks like you can do a lot of it for free. There are some paid stuff, but I just wanted to share that with you guys, and might be something other people want to check out.
Cool. And where can people find your stuff?
You can find me at chrisnessy.com.
Very cool. I will. You've now also made it into the School of Podcasting, so because I'll throw that into the what's your favorite tool thing
Cool.
that I talked about. So
All right.
Awesome.
Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, guys.
all right,
Thanks,
man.
Chris.
We'll see you. Excellent. Yeah, that's
How you do a call. That's how you do it.
There you go. You come in
Yeah.
like, hey, I just want to share
Add
this.
value. Get out. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Well, that's the thing at the show. Boy, man, when it was over at 6, there'd be at first you'd have this thing, the show is closing in 15 minutes. Please, blah, blah, blah. But man, when 6 o'clock rolled around, they had event. And I was going to say event Nazis, and I'm trying to not use the word Nazi because like everybody is a Nazi now. And I'm like, no, Nazis are really awful people. They're white supremacists and things like that. So that's my new kind of pet peeve is like everybody's a Nazi. And I'm like, no, Nazis are Nazis. Let's not water down that word. Let's say it when you mean it. You find a bunch of crappy people. I'm waiting for my slides to upload. So I'm gonna backtrack a second here. Going back to the records and bands discussion, it doesn't mean titles, how to brand it. So the label be the parent of the podcast, be the parent. I don't know what that means. Do you follow where he's going there, Jim? How to brand it.
Brand it. So should the label be the parent? Oh, should the label be the parent or the podcast, be the
Podcast be
parent?
the
At the
parent.
very highest level, right?
Oh,
So does
no.
the podcast at the highest or the label?
No, label. It's the label. And one of the things we do is we make all these fun albums and we also have a podcast. So it's the marketing arm of your company is what it is. So, I mean, in the same way, this literally is a marketing arm of the School of Podcasting. So is the School of Podcasting. So is your podcast consultant. So is the podcast rodeo show. So is the podcast review show. All those are little marketing bits that point people back to the School of Podcasting. And I found you want to see me look like a Smurf, Jim?
Yes.
I'm noticing something when I put my hand up here.
You go
with
blue.
With the
I saw that
thing.
earlier. Yeah.
I was like, what's going on with the camera? That I keep turning blue. I'm like, wow, that's some awful jet lag. And we've got another person, got a question coming on. And so before we hop in there, we're going to say thanks to our awesome supporters. And if you would like, we mentioned the School of Podcasting. Speaking to that, if you want some courses or coaching or community, and of course, unlimited one-on-one coaching, that is one of those things that I have found out is, as much as I love it and I love coaching, I have to explain to people, no, that's legit. They're like, so if I had a thing on Monday, I could do another one on Friday and go, yes, unlimited means unlimited, as long as it's about your show or show you're in. The Spotlight supporter of the week is Glenn the Geek over at horseradionetwork.com. And Glenn's been having fun. I saw he was over in Amsterdam and he's flying all over Europe. So hope you're having a good time over there, Glenn. If you like horses, horseradionetwork.com. And Ask the Podcast Coach runs on Podpage. If you want to try Podpage, that's my affiliate link. Go to trypodpage.com. You just put in your RSS feed and it'll spit out a website. In fact, you can make a website in about 10 minutes. It's crazy. And if you want to hear more geeky, lovely stuff from the one and only Jim Collison about home gadget geeks, check it out over at theaverageguy.tv. And we're on our journey to 100 active patrons. And you could be the next one. So if you heard that last week when we said that, you're like, oh, you know what? I should probably do that. Somebody else will be the next patron. Because when you jump on, we make a big deal about you becoming a new patron. And if you thought the other guy would do it, the other guy thought you would do it. So go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and become a patron today. And Sig, we're going to get to your question in just a second. We had one that's been sitting here for a second, so I wanted to answer Spoon's question real quick. So we'll be right with you. So Spoon says, how do you share your podcast, especially for those that don't understand apps and subscribing? Well, that's a great question. I always say treat your podcast, your episodes, like a blog post. So your episode description, that explains what it is. In fact, the one on my website is different from the one that I put in my media host, because I don't expect somebody to read War and Peace in their app. So I'll put most of it there. But when I go over to Google, this is where Google and words like, I want more words on this page, more good words. And so I always share a link to the blog post, which is really your episode, with the player on it. And then somewhere on there have links to Apple, Google, Spotify, and Amazon. That way, because 70% of Europe is using an Android phone. So if I share a Spotify link, that might work in some countries. In Japan, the number 3 app is Amazon, and I get a trickle from Amazon here in the US. So that's why I always point them somewhere where they can decide what app they want to use. And then I just always list Apple, Google, Spotify, and Amazon, because I think those are the top 4. Jim, how do you handle that situation?
Before I do that, Sig, if you want to join us, I need your question in the comments, in the private chat.
Yeah, if you
we have new security features because of last week. So click over to the private chat, drop your question in there, and we can bring in. Okay, so sorry, I got distracted by it. See, that's the problem. Put the question back up for me.
It was, where do you share your show? Like, how do you share your show?
Oh, yeah, that's been an interesting thing that has developed over time. Because I remember I used to create a ton of Twitter. I would schedule it out. I would schedule it out, daily, so it was showing up maybe 2 or 3 times a day, and then I just didn't get much traction there. I've tried, we did the Facebook stuff for a while. We're at a Facebook group. That didn't really go very far. I've done now I have a Discord group, which is a little bit better. It's a little tighter of a group, and so we throw things in Discord all the time. If I think I wanted to do something with this, though, if I really wanted to share it, and I'd buy advertising. Like, I still think that's the best. I would, and it's tricky, because there's a lot of people out there selling you goods that don't really get you there, and you'd be like, hey, well, how do I do this? I do that, and I shared the story a while ago. We bought some stuff on YouTube to promote one of the podcasts that we had just a short video podcast that we had just published, and it did like 175,000 views. Right now, did that get us a comment? No. Did that get us a bunch of subscribers? No. But it got us a bunch of views. Now, and if your message is strong enough and you've got a call to action, we didn't have a call to action in that video. So the intent wasn't necessarily to get them to do stuff with the video. We wanted the views for it. So I think if you're going to do anything to get any kind of stuff, and people say, well, and this is a hobby, well, then it'll probably stay stay a hobby at that point. So,
all right. Well, coming to the stage, so got a question about how to handle your audience and avoid clicking. Is that what you're talking about?
I meant like clicks, they'll forming gangs and like starting drama and all that. I feel like that almost forms organically. Sorry,
yeah.
I was just backstage showing my tree. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you guys smoke.
Excellent.
But,
what you want to do is if you have, let's say, a Facebook group, or, like Jim said, a Discord, usually there's a set of rules. And what you want to do is basically set the rules. And then the minute somebody crosses the line, they're gone. They're just gone. Because I mean, I used to have when I was a teacher, and I would put a big 15-minute timer on the screen. I said, when that gets to 0, the class is restarting. I'm not waiting for you. And when you come in and say, what did I miss? I'm not going back to catch up. We're all adults here. You got 15 minutes to go pee and check your voicemail. I'll see you in 15. And we would leave. Inevitably, somebody would walk in about 18 minutes and go, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And I'd be like, I'll get you in on the next exercise. In the meantime, just watch. And the second time we went to break, everybody came back in at the same time. So, where is your community at?
It's just on YouTube as well. I think
Oh,
that what they'll do often is that they'll form their own Discord groups. Right.
that you
So
can't you can't patrol people, but you can
of course not.
control what you do. Like Jim was talking earlier about how he has his comments on YouTube. He moderates those, so that's kind of one way because while you're sleeping, somebody's going to start a flame war on your YouTube channel. So that's one way to handle. But
Well, if you have controversial subjects, you're gonna get, I mean, it's gonna happen regardless. And there are some topics that are less controversial than others, but there's some out there, and you're just gonna have to manage it.
Yeah. And if nothing else, try to be the person that shows how to handle a different opinion. So if somebody comes up to me and says, no, really, Dave, YouTube is a podcast, then instead of just, saying you're an idiot and kicking them out, then maybe, okay, let's have a dialogue about this to show that people can actually talk and share difference of opinions and see if they can learn anything, as opposed to your typical sports show where people just scream at each other and they leave. Maybe you're the example of, okay, here's how we handle it if somebody has a difference of opinion, as opposed to let's start our own Discord and, start, some sort of flame war.
I mean, honestly, I try to avoid that. Like, I don't even have a Discord. I don't have any like kind of line of communication or any kind of discourse. Discourse is limited to chat, but
Mm-hmm.
they will form their own like hate mobs, and like I'll have guests on, right? And guests will join, guests will leave, and like they'll be like, oh, we don't like this person, and they'll form their own hate mob on this person, etc. And very often this person will be it will even be somebody that doesn't even frequent the show, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe they've only even showed up maybe a handful of times, yet they're still like a frequent topic of conversation and part of that hate mob. And additionally, they'll have many hate mobs, and they'll have it's crazy. It's like, and I get that it's something that forms itself, and you cannot control it, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But is there any way to like steer things?
That's a really good question.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, but you run the risk of dumbing it down. And at some point, if you're going to be in the public space, if you're going to be in the public eye, it's going to happen. You're going to have these disagreements on stuff. You're going to have, where the subject goes a direction you didn't want it to go, or what. You're going to have some folks. The audience, you can't control the audience, and so you either moderate them heavy, or you allow it to run, in some regards. But it is, Sig, it is one of those areas. I was just talking about this where be careful what you wish for as you're out there reaching an audience. You may or may not, like the audience that you've gathered in there based on what you're saying. And so it's your choice. You control that. You control how much or how little you moderate that group, and you just got to kind of run with what you've been given.
And keep in mind, the thing that trolls want is attention. So the more attention you give them, the more, if let's say, Coach Dave was a, trolling guy here, hate mobs suck. Well, if I actually put their comment on the screen or talk about them on the show, well, then they've succeeded. They, Mark Maron was talking about this. He's like, trolls want to make you mad. They want to make you upset. And he's like, the minute you get on your show and they go, this guy said this and he's such an idiot and blah, 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 he's a mission accomplished. they're like, that's exactly what they set out to do. So he said, ignore the trolls, but he didn't say ignore. He said something with started with F and ended in uck. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bummer because you can't control it, but I that would be my advice. Like, don't throw any gas on the fire and go that route. So
Sig, hope that helps. Thanks for jumping in.
Thank you,
Thanks, man.
Dave and Jim.
bet.
Appreciate your input.
Yep.
I come from a very informal community. Let's just say that. Let's say it that way.
right.
And I appreciate your articulate and specific input. I really, Jim and Dave.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for coming out.
I'm sorry, I hit the button a little too soon there. Sorry. With this one, we don't have to screen. We know DR. So, DR, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you? Thanks for putting me on. Sorry about no camera. I
That's
am
all
not
right.
camera ready today.
That's okay.
Okay, so I have a question about Twitter, and the reason why I wanted to come on is because I don't know the lingo, and it would take way too many of the little posts in the general chat.
Mhm.
So the podcast feature that they have on Twitter, is that what you call it? A feature? Because you can upload it up to what, 8?
I think it's 8 gigs.
Yeah.
And they're calling it a podcast, but you know what? This is also a podcast. And, this is a podcast. And by the way, for anyone listening, I'm just holding up random items. Yeah. So it's not a podcast. But they're making it available to where you can upload video. I don't know that you can upload audio. They just said 8 gigs. So and that's if you're blue chipped or
Oh.
whatever it is, blue check mark. So $8 for 8
okay.
gigs. So I have not, I don't have my, I'm
So
not
not audio.
I don't know yet. I haven't
Okay.
played with it, and I'm not blue check mark. Do you have a blue check mark, Jim?
No.
See, and it's weird because if I have a blue check mark, there are people that'll be like, "Oh, Dave's a blue check mark." You know what that means? He's a racist, misogynist. He's one of
It
those.
has taken on a little bit of a different meaning in the last
Yeah,
couple
and
months.
I'm like, but what if I
Yeah.
just want to grow my audience and I got $8 sitting in my wallet? But so yeah, I haven't played with it yet. I've heard that they turned it on. You got 8 gigs, and then of course the story that everybody heard was, the guy from Podcast Movement, that's super. I don't care about your feelings. Your facts are not my feelings. Oh, the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Is said he will put his podcasts, better known as content, on Twitter. So
DR, do you have a serious Twitter following?
Well, I'm a producer, and I don't
Right,
have a
right.
podcast of my own yet. I'm working on that. But one of my clients is a pediatrician,
Mhm.
and she's actually a retired pediatrician who's now sits on the board of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And she has her podcast is doing pretty darn good.
nice.
Yeah. And so I do audiograms and I do static images, and I know about the whole, which camp are you in on that? But I thought, when I do this, I always wind up saying, link to episode 136 is in the comments. Now, even when I put it in the comments, it's still not clickable. It's still something that you have to copy paste into your player or your URL. But I'm wondering that if it ever does get around to audio being on Twitter, if that will ever be clickable. I mean, because it's a pain in the butt to keep having to, highlight,
paste.
copy, and
Our links are clickable in Twitter. I know that for a fact, but I don't know with this new thing. No, I have no idea. Send your email to Elon at twitter.com. Yeah. Dan says I saw people on I saw Dan, here we go. Some people on Twitter saying that the videos won't upload properly at all either. So it sounds like it's buggy.
Of course it's buggy. It's Twitter.
But I guess on one hand, it's a way for people to know there's a new episode. I don't see anybody sitting on Twitter listening to a 24-minute video because
Well,
again,
listening to videos, and that's
Yeah.
another camp that we could talk about the different camps of that. You know,
and it might be Daniel has a point here. Enter the full URL. So not just, schoolofpodcasting.com,
Oh.
https:// back, that whole 9 yards.
So not like a pretty link?
If it's
Is
got
that
the full thing, but
Fully resolved. Yeah.
it's got to have it's got to start with H, basically.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
not just,
That might help then.
bit.ly.sbuk. It's got to be https://
Oh.
bit.ly.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
There you go.
Yeah,
That-
I
So
appreciate
does
it.
this person have a following on Twitter? I'm still wondering why Twitter is even an. I mean, I know they got a new thing and they made a lot of
Yeah.
news, but do they have a big following on Twitter?
Well, I guess I don't know. I mean, I'm putting it on my feed
Okay.
and the first thing that it says is from the pod producer's desk,
Okay.
basically letting people know I'm a producer and,
Yeah.
yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm doing good. We're doing good. Thank you so much for
Oh, you're
letting me
welcome.
ask this in
You
my
bet.
weird way.
All good. All good.
That's it. So, yeah, that's I guess I'll have to go get a blue check mark. I need to get a blue check mark.
No, you don't have to.
I need to
Why?
I need
Why?
I need
Why
I
would
need
you
to
get
set
one?
up I guess because if somebody asks me a question, I can answer it.
Oh,
but
yeah, that's true.
I need to set up a channel on Apple and put all my shows under a channel. I think that's $20
Trees
a
falling
year.
in the forest and no one's there to, doesn't make a
Yeah.
sound. I don't know. I mean,
See, I'm doing a thing right now, using Buzzsprout ads, and I haven't checked them, so I'm going to check them live here. But what I did differently this time, because the first time I've said this before, the first time the ad was horrible. The second time I let too many shows run with the ad to where it lasted like 2 days and it was over. So I've had 1,266 listens to that. And I remember the last time I checked, I think I'd had 3 clicks. And that's what I did this time was I put links, because they have a link to whatever it is you're promoting. So I had a link to the School of Podcasting, and then I had a link. I've had 3 links. I've had 3 clicks. Excuse me. I've had 3 clicks to the School of Podcasting on the big one, Apple. 2 clicks on Spotify, and I'm trying to find my original one here, but it's so tough. I mean, it's all this stuff is kind of it's a drop in the bucket in a way. And I've had, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. I've had 100 clicks. Let me make sure this is the right one. No, that's links to actual Buzzsprout ad. I've had 13 clicks. So whatever that is, less than 20 clicks so I'd have to do the math on that. If I said 20 divide, isn't it fun? Live math is always great. So I'll round up to 20. I'll say I had 20 downloads divided by 1266 is 2% if you round it up. So we're in the ballpark. So that's where I wish it was, I got 12,000 listens and I had, 800 subscribers. And I'm like, nope. You got to get them to stop scrolling, or in this case, they're listening to a show. They break in. We'll be back right after this. And then Dave Jackson comes on. That they got to go, wait, well, that sounds like something for me. So we'll see. Todd the Gator has a question. He says, oh, wait, that's the second one. What was this? I had it here a second ago. The 2-factor is only available using Twitter Blue. Is that true? I don't know. Do you know, Jim? I use Twitter. I'm probably more.
Daniel has the answer, right?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the less secure SMS-based 2FA is available only to Twitter Blue, but app-based 2FA is still available to all. That was a pretty big misconception that got, during as Twitter was burning itself to the ground. Everybody, they put out this press release, we're removing 2FA, and the press picked that up as you can't do 2FA at all. And there still is a form of 2FA for everybody, but it was, the whole place was on fire. So,
well, and it's always fun when a headline comes out and, like I actually saw, I a journalist and he was starting a podcast. I'm like, good, because we need journalists. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's so many people that just they write a clickbait article, nobody reads it. They just read the headline, they assume what it's about, they don't read the article. I'm like, ah. So there, one thing I should also point out that I heard a bit at this show is people like, oh, you've been podcasting a while. I got a question for you. Got an idea for a show. Jim, without even telling you what the pitch is, how do you know if your show is good?
I don't understand the question. Sorry.
So if I come up to you, well, I'll do the whole thing. So I'm doing a show. It's about where we take insert type of people and we, there's one guy that's going to do it. This guy was awesome. He's Indian and he wants to interview Indian entrepreneurs to show that, people of Indian descent are successful. And it's not just at Google and Facebook. Like you can do other things. And I was like, cool. And he's really into it. And he asked me a ton of questions, which was cool. Like, hey, you got to know who your audience is, why you doing this, what's the goal, this and that. But I had other people come up and said, hey, I'm doing a show. We're going to talk to so-and-so people. We might interview such and such and blah, blah, blah. Yada, ninja. Do you think that has legs? And I was like, there have been things, like there's only one way to find out.
Yeah.
And that's to, record your first episode, throw it away, record your second episode, get somebody to listen to it.
Throw that one away.
Yeah. And then eventually put it out there. But like there is, if there was a formula, then, we've seen that with the John Lee Dumas effect. We could call this Ask the Podcast Coach on Fire. It's not going to make it popular.
Yeah.
There are plenty of shows that are great that aren't getting the downloads they should be. And there are a lot of shows that are crap that are probably getting a ton of shows, but crap is in the eye of the beholder. And so, I can tell you best practices. I can tell you have good audio. I can tell you maybe avoid video until you're ready. I can tell you know who your audience is, don't be boring, but you can do all that stuff. I mean, if you go to Nashville, there are so many talented musicians there that are waiters, and so if you're a person that's like, I don't know if this is going to work or not, there is no way that you can run it through some sort of algorithm and it'll say, oh, you'll get, 15,000 downloads with this. It's like, you kind of just got to do it and, tweak and
look at Seinfeld. Like, it took really 3 seasons for that thing. It almost got canceled early on, right? You look at some sci-fi shows.
oh,
They
yeah.
never like Stargate SG-1. I mean, it had 11 seasons and it was just only mildly successful by Hollywood
Right.
standards, but it was good enough. They just kept going with it, type deal. It was not, you often wonder if it'd survive in today's Netflix, Amazon Prime, now Max environment. So yeah, I Dave, I like what you say. Well, sounds interesting. It sounds like you're gonna try. You got to try. Nobody knows. Nobody
Yeah.
knows if it's going to be successful or not. You don't know until you tried.
I mean, in business, you can say, I'm thinking of starting this service that does this for this people that need to blank. And if you say that to that kind of person and they don't go, wait, is that available now? Can I buy that now? That's a good sign,
Right.
but it still doesn't ensure, that you're going to get a giant audience. But if you have people going, oh, I would listen to that. Like, is that like, do you have a sample of that now? That's a good idea. But that means you have to know who your target audience
Yeah.
is, and that whole 9 yards.
Who would have thought Critical Role would have gotten the funding and the audience and
Yeah.
I mean, that thing has a life of its own. And yet there's a huge segment of the population who has no idea what that podcast even is. I mean, they've raised millions of dollars in fundraisers. Just, these voice actors who got together to do this podcast, which has been
Yeah.
very, very, very successful. Now, their own careers as voice actors could have led to a lot of that popularity. Could 8 people just get together and do a D&D podcast? I bet there's 100 of those out there, by the way,
Oh,
that are Critical Role ripoffs, right? And they're trying.
oh yeah.
They're trying. Are they them? No. Would yours be successful? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe if you're you and people
Yeah.
like you. Right?
Dave says, Stargate also broke a lot of new ground
did.
on FX for
It
TV.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
other
think it's
thing.
Serenity too. Serenity,
Oh, yeah.
that series that only 2 seasons and it was a failure and the fans went crazy and they came back and did a movie and we'd all love to see it again. But that day has kind of come and gone too. So you don't really know.
Yeah. The other thing that I asked when people brought up the YouTube thing, like, hey, they're gonna, RSS, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, speaking of that, I go, do you listen to YouTube music? And not a single person listens to you. And now, I've done what Jim did. Like, let's go over and see what's going on over here. And I haven't been back. So that's the part that's always interesting. But yeah, to Jim and to Craig for your birthday.
Whoa! Whoa!
Yeah, a little David Lee Roth for you. But Jim, what's coming up on Home Gadget Geeks?
Yeah, I took the week off.
Oh,
It's my
look at you.
birthday. It's my
That's
birthday.
true.
I took the week off. I didn't feel like it. It's funny. I put in Discord, "Hey, I'm taking the week off. Birthday week." And one of my listeners said, "Oh, thank God, I'm a month behind. This gives me some time to catch up." So your listeners may not always. It may not always be a negative thing to take a week off. So if you're in that situation where you need one, just do it.
Well, and you let them know, hey, I'm taking a week off. It's
Yeah.
not like they went, was
Yeah.
Jim hit by a bus? Did he not look the right way in London and get rolled over by a taxi?
You got to watch for those things over there. It's scary.
Oh, it was,
Yeah.
multiple times. I almost got nailed in that whole 9 yards. So, and the fun thing was the last day I had gone and I'd had Vietnamese food, which I never had. That was yummy. I had fish and chips because I had to have that. And the third night I was so tired. I was like, whatever's close to the hotel is where I'm eating. And it was a Five Guys. And I was like, all right, Five Guys. Because I don't eat Five Guys normally. It's still kind of new to me. But on the School of Podcasting, it's the question of the month. And the question of the month was, what is one of your favorite tools? And I'm leaving it as open as that. It could be hardware, software, whatever it is. Head on over there. If you do that today on the 27th, it's schoolofpodcasting.com/question. And if you have a question and you're not watching this live and like, oh, I can never get there when you guys are live, I believe it is askthepodcastcoach.com/ask. And I've now given you like 15 calls to action and you won't remember any of them, but it's in the show notes at askthepodcastcoach.com/438. Thanks to the chat room and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll see you next week with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell if you're watching on YouTube, or follow if you're on an audio app.